So Tom here is back from Watt Mountain Bike's Trail Bike of the Year test. It's a huge test, biggest of the year for you?
Yep, we've got 28 bikes in. We whittled that down to the top 10 and then down to a final top 3.
The good thing about it is it gives you sort of like a kind of state of where things are going. You can get a feel for what the trends are, what's sort of happening. So were there any things that sort of like leapt out at you?
Well, we noticed a few things sort of through our testing. Obviously, the wheel size debate is a big one. We had everything from 650B, we had plus bikes and we had 29ers. The other thing we noticed is obviously drivetrains is an area of continual development with both SRAM and Shimano bringing out new products all the time and competing obviously for that trail market, so that's really interesting.
Was there any sort of bias one way or another with SRAM or Shimano? Because I know that last year when we did this, there was a lot more SRAM than there was Shimano. So do you think introducing their new wider range cassettes, that helped them?
SRAM obviously did really well with their wide-ranging 1x11 group set when that first came out. And yes, Shimano have brought in their wider range cassettes and they're still pushing that 2x drivetrain. What we found in the test, certainly Trail Bike of the Year, was that we had a roughly 60-40 split in SRAM's favour.
Shimano started off with their 11-40 cassette. They've now moved to an 11-42 and they're now going to move to an 11-46. Do you think this shows that they're actually being forced by SRAM to kind of play catch up in the 1x? Are they being told by bike manufacturers, look, we don't want a front derailleur, we want 1x, and they're going to have to cope with that? Do you think that's true?
I certainly think they're playing a little bit of catch up with SRAM in the trail market. Shimano have their reasons for sticking to that original smaller range of cog spacing, which was to have smaller jumps between the gears, which benefits maybe cross-country riders and certainly comes over from the road side of things. In a trail application, those jumps don't matter so much, so perhaps this is why Shimano are bringing in these wider ranging cassettes. The other thing Shimano are still pushing is the front mech. So we had a number of bikes in Trail Bike of the Year which had a 2x11 drivetrain. Shimano brought out this new side swing front derailleur, which to be fair does work a lot better than the traditional top or bottom pull ones. But I think we are going to continue to see the expansion of 1x drivetrains across bike ranges.
Especially with the Sram Eagle, which is the new 10-52 rear cassette. If you want to know more about Sram Eagle, then check out a video here over Tom's face. You put it there.
I mean, I think the Sram Eagle stuff is really interesting, and obviously Shimano are going to have to continue to respond in some way to this. I don't think next year we're going to see any Sram Eagle in Trail Bike of the Year, for example, because it's a high-end product. But I think what we are going to see from sort of the next few months onwards is more and more bikes which are developed solely around these one single ring drivetrains. We're already seeing this a little bit, but I think in the next year or two, really they're going to struggle to have any place for front derailleurs.
I think a really interesting thing, looking at the list of bikes, is the Boost 148 wheel spacing. Has that started to take hold?
I think what we're starting to see is obviously Boost axles front and rear are starting to appear. It's probably not quite as fast growing as we might have expected to when it was launched. We're only seeing it on a few sort of Fox and RockShox forks and a few back ends. We're still obviously seeing across the board 15 by 100mm at the front and 142 at the back. I think SRAM and the people who developed Boost are probably looking for it to grow a bit faster than it has been.
I guess some of the reason it's not got that traction is a lot of those bikes are existing frames that have been around a while, and who knows, maybe when they refresh the frame or update it, then they'll probably move to Boost.
That's something we've certainly seen actually, is the plus bikes that we've had in the test and a lot of the 29ers which are a new chassis are coming with this Boost, whereas it is maybe the less updated ones or the older models, and certainly only the 650 ones which are still in the standard 15 by 100mm and the 142 at the back. I mean, what do you think about the whole Boost thing? Is it something which bike companies should be using, or?
I think Boost is a thing that's going to annoy a lot of people that have already got bikes and want to keep buying wheels. But to be honest, it's the sort of thing that it does add a stiffness benefit. They're actually designing properly around it. You get a wider wheel, wider spoke angle, and it's a pretty simple thing for them to do. Okay, there's not much backwards compatibility, but you might as well design it into a new frame if you're making a new frame. It makes sense. I know it's not something that anyone really likes, but you always have to change and move on. Because again, otherwise, if we'd said, oh, we don't want 135 by 12, we don't want 142 by 12, we don't want Boost, then we'd be stuck with bikes with quick releases. They aren't as stiff, they aren't as secure, and it's a thing that we've just got completely used to now. You're always going to have to discard some things and move on with new ones. So while there are lots of new standards being developed, the rate of change of some more basic things, like the geometry of the bike, how's that moving along?
So we can definitely see that there is movement in geometry, but it's perhaps not sort of quite the step changes that one might expect, or in your case, want to see. You know, a lot of bikes are getting a bit longer in the top tube and the reach. Some of them are getting a little bit slacker at the front and a little bit steeper in the seat angle, but there's very few who are still moving towards, say, Mondraker's forward geometry, for example. It's all a little bit middle of the road.
It's slightly telling that the people that still got the most sort of progressive geometry out there are the people that started off, and they haven't changed that, well, which is Mondraker. I think everyone else has been kind of trying to creep a little bit close, kind of touching a toe in the water. I'd really like to see sort of like a bigger change in that, people taking more risks with stuff, because I think it does have a big reward. I mean, there shouldn't really be any place in mountain biking for long stems anymore. Maybe cross-country racing, you can have that one.
In Trail Bike of the Year, I don't think we had any stems longer than 70mm, and they're probably as short as about 35mm. I'd say most are sort of in the 40 to 50mm arena at the moment.
You don't actually need loads and loads of travel. If you build a short travel but stiff and sort of slack bike, you can actually push that really hard, and again, it sort of probably pedal a little bit better. You can maybe build it a little bit lighter, and you're not completely ironing out all of the terrain. They can still be really lively, sort of fun bikes to ride.
We've also noticed this with 29ers, so no longer is a 29er just the sole preserve of the cross-country racer. You've got bikes like the nuke-proof Mega 290 or the Specialized Camber 29. All of a sudden we've now got bikes building really great geometry around these sort of stiffer, you know, more capable 29er bikes. Partly in thanks to Boost again, and the likes of the RockShox Pike coming in a 29er format.
Away from Trail Bike of the Year, there's a few new bikes that can be released this year. The YT Jeffsy, again, short travel, big wheeled ripper. Evil the Reckoning. I think we're going to see a resurgence of the 29er, but in a very different way than we know it now. Tyres, hugely important thing. Do you feel brands are still getting it right, or there are still brands that are getting it wrong?
There's definitely brands still getting it wrong. People are still concerned about weight of their bike, and on a trail bike I think there's often a compromise where people are putting a lighter tyre on to make it lighter, to make it easier to ride up a hill, but then you just spend so much time fixing punctures. Bike manufacturers should be putting better tyres on now. I think everyone really realises that.
There are a few plus bikes in your test. People aren't quite sure whether they should have like a big 2.8 tyre on your 40mm rim. I think we might end up somewhere between 650 plus, 27 plus, and the current 27.5. So thinking like 30mm rim, sort of like 2.6 tyre.
I think that's definitely something in a couple of years' time. You know, we're seeing Maxxis looking to release some tyres which are around the sort of the 2.5, 2.6 inch, and there's a lot more wheels now which are sort of 30mm width internally. So that's certainly something which could come along, and obviously some of the problems we've been having in our testing with plus tyres is, despite the fact that they're proving actually really fast, some of them, especially say the Schwalbe tyres, are very puncture prone because they have to try and keep that weight in check. I think we'll find there's sort of the two distinct camps coming together in the middle, and maybe we'll actually see a bit more continuity with wheel and tyre size in a couple of years' time, which consumers hopefully will appreciate. It's maybe not the time to say definitely don't buy a bike of a particular type, but if you've just got a bike last year and you're thinking, oh, maybe I should sort of upgrade now, maybe leave it a year or two just to see where we're heading. I think it'd be really interesting.
Or buy the bike and get a year's worth of riding, which you'll really enjoy. Your choice. So an interesting thing is that while electronics is starting to make a bit of an appearance on mountain bikes, it's not quite at the point where it's completely revolutionising the sport.
I think we can see sort of hints of it coming. There's obviously Fox's Live Valve, which is like some sort of piezoelectric open and closure system for the shocks. The Magura Viron, which is their electronic dropper post. Really, I think it's going to be a few more years before we start to see the real sort of integration of electronics into mountain bikes in a bigger way than we're seeing now.
I mean, Shimano's Di2 system, that's not really sort of set the world on fire. The reason that Di2 hasn't been that popular is you're looking at the thick end of sort of £400. It'll be interesting to see where that compromise is made, whether people go, it's worth doing, it's worth spending the money on, but at the moment I think there's bigger considerations than electronic shifting.
Ultimately though, the brands which are bringing out electronics do seem to be in for quite a lot of flack and a lot of criticism for doing this, but without people pushing the envelope in terms of technology, it might not take off, but then it might actually lead to something brilliant. I mean, we're not riding around with canty brakes, rigid forks, and 7-speed derailleurs. So there's something to be said for people who are pushing that envelope, even if you personally don't think it's the right way to go.
An electronic brings us neatly to e-bikes. Guess what? In the future, there's going to be a lot more of them.
People are going to hate them, but sort of the bike industry revolves around people hating things they haven't tried. So before we pass too much judgment on them, we're going to try and get out on some, and I think that's probably what people should do before they really start sparring them and slating them.
They're going to find a place in the world of mountain biking, wherever that is, whether it's the mainstream, whether it's a specific end of it, whether it's for a certain age group or skill set. Whether you like it or not, they're here to stay.
So that's where we think the world of mountain biking is going to go. Geometry is going to continue to change, possibly incrementally. Wheel sizes is still going to be up in the air a little bit until things settle down, maybe in a few more years' time. We may or may not see more electronics coming into mountain biking. And finally, hopefully, bike companies will start putting decent tyres on their bikes.
Please do it.